Well, hello, BookTube. It's Justin here at This Just In. It's been a little while, but I'm back to you now with a tag video. I was tagged by AJ Dunn at AJ Dunn Reads and Writes. I was tagged with the D tag, which is part of a series of tags that Jim over at Jim's Books Reading and Stuff has been going through. These have been some pretty fun tags. I've been enjoying watching them, and I'm pretty excited that I got tagged on this one. I might tackle the rest of these tags myself, but I do hope that when we come around to J, or when Jim comes around to the J tag, that he tags me directly, but we'll see. But I'm going to go ahead here and file my report on the D tag. The first prompt, D is for Dahl. What is your favorite book by Roald Dahl? Well, I've seen other booktubers with this set. I've got this nice set of Dahl books, very colorful, very fun. Of course, I've been reading these with my kids. We've read not all of them, but a number of them. The Witches, SEO, Trot, Matilda, of course. But my favorite is going to remain, as it has seemed to have been for so many other booktubers, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That classic story of Charlie Bucket and his trip to the Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. I have a fond memory of this being read to me during my fourth grade class. Teacher read this to us at the end of the day for several weeks. It was a fond shared memory with my classmates that I have, and it's made this one of my favorite books. And of course, the movie is fantastic as well. Let's see, our next D is for Doctor Who. What is your favorite time travel novel? I think some booktubers lamented that Jim did not ask who our favorite doctor from Doctor Who was. I can't really say that I have a favorite doctor. Haven't watched much Doctor Who except for when I was a child. And the fourth Doctor, who was played by Tom Baker, the scarf and the great curly hair. I think he was the Doctor from the 70s to the early 80s. Really the only Doctor that I ever watched, and I have pretty fond memories of watching that show with him as the Doctor. But that does not answer the question as to what my favorite time travel novel is. I love time travel stories, I mentioned before, and I could name several time travel novels or stories that I love, but I would like to save those for my own time travel video, if not time travel series of videos. But I will share with you the novel that kind of sparked or made me realize my love of time travel novels, and that is The Anubis Gates by Tim Powers. The Anubis Gates was written in 1983, released in 1983, and it tells the story of Brendan Doyle. He's hired by an eccentric millionaire as a bit of a tour guide as they travel back in time to 1810 to attend a lecture of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And our hero, Doyle, ends up getting separated from his group and has some adventures in early 19th century England. It's a fantastic book with lots of adventure, very much like a lot of Tim Powers novels, many of which I consider my favorite. Would highly recommend this book as well as several of his other novels. D is for dark. What is the darkest book you have read? Well, I've read a lot of horror. Horror tends to be pretty dark, but I think probably the darkest book that I've read is Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door. It's a pretty horrifying story about a young girl who was held captive by her aunt in her basement, and she is tortured by not only her aunt, but by the local children. And it's based on a true story, and it's a pretty horrifying, dark book. I'm not sure I would recommend it for everybody, but it is probably the darkest book that I have read. Our next prompt, how many Dickens novels have you read? One. I have read only one. That is Oliver Twist. I enjoyed it a great deal, as I recall. And I should probably read more Dickens. I think my next Dickens book will probably be Great Expectations, as I attempt to fill in my gaps when it comes to the classics. So that is my Dickens, extensive Dickens reading. D is for dictionary. In the internet years, do you still use physical paper dictionaries? No, I don't. I use computers, I use phones, or I use the internet, look up look up words. I will sometimes call out to the personal assistant device I have at home and ask it for word definitions. But I do from time to time peruse my Dictionary of Symbols by J.E. Serlot. This is a fun book. I picked this up. Someone in one of my English classes in college mentioned this book, and then I sometime later I was fascinated by the idea of it, because teasing out symbols and meanings in symbols is always something that I felt was difficult for me. So I thought, oh, well, that's problem solved. Here's a dictionary of symbols. Not only does it help with that from time to time, although I probably don't refer to it in that way as much as I thought I might, but it's just fun to kind of leaf through from time to time and read it. It's really beautifully written. This is the second edition of it. It's an older edition, but there is a more updated version of it, or edition of it, that I may try to hunt down at some point in the future. That's my favorite dictionary. D is for Dagger and Detective. What was the last detective novel you've read? Oh, I can't say that I can recall having read very much detective fiction throughout my reading history. The last one that I can remember reading is probably The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which was fine. The first portion of it I think I found pretty boring, and then the larger middle section where the actual investigation begins I found gripping, and then the last part of it I seem to recall being kind of landing with a thud. But that is the last detective novel that I could remember reading. I should probably pick something else up, maybe some Agatha Christie, and get some more detective novels down. D is for Dostoevsky. What is your favorite Dostoevsky novel? Unfortunately, I don't have one, as I have never finished a Dostoevsky novel. I started Crime and Punishment and didn't finish it, not because I wasn't enjoying it so much, just things got in the way at the time. However, I would very much like to read one and finish it. I think Brothers Karamazov will be next on my list when it comes to that Dostoevsky, as I understand that is a wonderful book. I look forward to reading that. D is for diversity. Which book from your reading ticked the most diversity boxes? Good question. I think that would have to be, as far as I can remember, Kindred, which is a time travel novel. It is written by a Black female author who was a lesbian. It is the story of a Black woman from the 70s who is transported back in time to the early 19th century to a plantation in Maryland, where she suffers directly the experience of slavery. It's a tremendous novel. It's a difficult read, but it is well worth reading. I would very much like to have more diversity in my reading, as I think it is important to read the points of views, or read about the points of views from people who are different from me, people who have different experiences than I do. So, but this right now is the one that ticks our most diversity boxes. D is for drawing. Who is your favorite visual artist? Jim seems to mostly be referring to drawing or illustrators and painters. I can't say that I have a favorite painter or illustrator. I don't, not that I don't appreciate art, or paintings or illustrations, but I just don't really have one, or have studied enough illustrators or painters to have picked one out as a favorite. However, I do greatly enjoy the work of Ralph Steadman in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I really like this sketchy kind of cartoonish style. I'm drawn to that kind of rough, I guess if that's the word for it, rough style. Also, Gerald Scarfe, who worked on Pink Floyd, the album art for Pink Floyd's The Wall, as well as doing some work in the film Pink Floyd The Wall. I enjoy that a great deal as well. D is for drink. So during the pandemic, my wife and I, we got into kind of a ritual or a hobby, I guess, when we started making cocktails on Saturday nights. It's fun. It's been a fun thing. It's been fun learning about different drinks that we hadn't experienced before, who we've mostly been beer and wine drinkers. But I saw a YouTube video where a bartender went through a series of standard drinks, and I really enjoyed his passion for the drinks and hearing his stories about them, the history of them. So we started making cocktails at home. And one of the things that we did, my wife bought this really great, beautiful book called Drink, the Ultimate Cocktail Book. And it's got some really fantastic pictures in it, tons of recipes, some really great pictures, and it's been a lot of fun having this around and reading about the drinks and using as a bit of a guide. I will say that it tends to be very specific about the ingredients in its recipes in a way that I'm not sure. It makes it harder, to track down some of these specific types of alcohols that they name in their recipes if you decide to go that way, or you can just find your own version of that alcohol. One of our favorite drinks is the Boulevardier. Boulevardier consists of rye whiskey, about 1.5 to 1¾ ounces of rye whiskey, maybe 2, depending upon how strong you want your drink. An ounce of sweet vermouth. We really enjoy the Carpano Antica, and then an ounce of Campari, maybe a little bit less if you're not yet used to the bitterness of the Campari. It really makes for a really nice, refreshing, yet somehow dense kind of a drink. I like to put if I'm using rye whiskey, I'll put a lemon twist in it, as well as maraschino cherry. You can see sitting at the bottom there. Anyway, so D is for drink. And finally, who do I tag? Let's see. I think Michael K. Vaughn hasn't done this tag yet. So Mike, I'm tagging you on the D tag. Look forward to seeing your version of this. I'm also going to tag Shelley Swearingen, fairly new booktuber, much as myself. I think her output is past mine at this point, so I'm going out. But I don't think she's done this tag yet. I think she's done the A tag, but she hasn't done the D tag yet. So I'm going to tag you on this one, Shelley. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate you sticking around, and I hope to see you again. All right. Cheers and good night.